their snow while they're out there with their shoes on.
Yeah, that's neat.
But I saw you one day with your wife coming across Bay as I was leaving 11 Illinois, as I was leaving 11 Illinois. Yeah, so,
Okay. That's why you're here. I was wondering why you're here, 11 Illinois.
yeah, I'm here to represent Dr. Stevens,
Right,
just to be here, and Suzanne, he's representing.
the buyer, got it.
Well, yeah, but he is here in support of me.
You're here observing.
And for a minute, I had a heart-stopping moment, don't do that to me.
No, it's all good.
I know, and Carol talked to her yesterday for an hour and 49 minutes.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
How's the baby? How's Chris's baby? No, what's his wife's name? Leanne.
Yeah, so my older one, he just became a grandpa today. So my older brother I went to Hawaii with.
Yeah.
He's the grandpa.
Yeah.
His son lives in Alabama in the middle. I know. I texted him. Oh, the son moved back home. I was living with him until about 2 months ago. About maybe 20 minutes away on the other side of town. Oh, yeah. But I'm texting him like at 12:30. I'm like, Grandpa, he goes, no. And I was like, hello? Baby was born an hour ago. I know. I'm like, you're a grandpa. You should know these things. It's also quite possible that somebody got town was one big.
So I mean, right, so I was gonna look at. I just remember.
What is that email that's wide open for?
Because some will get more. I don't know.
Text message.
Yeah.
He wants to meet, talk about the noise ordinance.
With us?
Yeah.
Oh,
You and me. And I think we just set 10:30 tomorrow morning at Olive and Oaks. Can you make that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 10.
10:30.
I thought it was 9:30.
He couldn't do 9:30. Well, I proposed it at the beginning, and then by the time he got back to me, I'd already booked something else for 9:30.
is there any chance?
So I moved it to 10:30. He said it was fine with him.
Okay, 10.
10:30.
Is that?
10:30.
Yeah, Olive and Oaks.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Excuse me.
But I can go print it.
That might,
I'll go make.
you know, I'll go fetch if you'll just,
No, I'll make copies.
okay, thank you. Hey, Ted.
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Think of the number of trees that have given their lives to our budget processes here.
They ran out of paper today, they had to go.
Did they
get some.
really? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we actually did run out of paper at one point today. Hey, Glenn. All right, how are you?
So, yeah.
Counselor? How are you? I'm well. I was just at your office today.
Were you?
Yeah, stopped by to drop off something, which you're not allowed to know about because it was Donovan Smith related.
It was that what?
For Donovan
And you
Smith.
waste a lot of paper,
For John.
baby.
He said drop it there because it was going up on some, yeah,
So all we need is this.
Yeah, we gotta run out, because
right.
The current one, the one that's on the table.
hopefully something's moving there.
Yeah, maybe we're just moving forward with time, yeah. He just wanted the annexation report from 2018, but he also knows that it's kind of dated. So, but I talked to him today about just a bunch of different things.
Was he able to hear it? Did he hear it?
So. He must have, yeah, because, yeah. It's funny, I think he went on, yeah.
Okay.
This kid wrote him such a celebrated birthday today. Saw some email going around.
You represented Monty in the
Thank you.
Starbucks Hall thing, right?
Thank you.
So,
Oh my God, this is this thing you sent on the email.
Got the off-street parking requirement.
You didn't like it, huh?
gone.
I didn't want to read it.
Code compliance. Got
Too long?
Yeah, so talk to me.
compliance in for code.
Okay.
Seriously,
Yeah.
Very good weekend.
because I had
Oh,
five other things.
oh, no, I know what you mean.
Reading before I came up here.
But, so on Thursday, I was down there with my group of basketball guys.
Yeah, I remember, I read all of that. Is this, no, this is different from the one you gave us. Oh, this is more.
And I'm like, something happened. You didn't hear? Basically, they got the
Recording in
outdoor,
progress.
you know, seating and all that stuff done. But apparently, I didn't want to get into details, but apparently Trey put a lot of roadblocks in front of
Yeah,
it.
let me know. Okay.
I didn't either. And he's keeping, I said, well, it passed, right? I said, "Right, yeah, but it didn't need to be.
That's where I am on this. Okay, I got it.
As prior to that conversation, we had a discussion, I talked to, talked to the state, talked to other municipalities, if the residents, no one would tell me.
I think we killed a lot of trees today. Really sad, but
They would give me actually property.
Right.
Good.
And so based on that, those are the figures that I've written, provided there.
Okay, thank you.
It's,
Appreciate
at
it.
least it's a benchmark, right?
You know, I worked
Not
on
within the municipality,
project in
right?
Goose Island. Did you know that?
I'm sorry, you give
I
me.
was consultant for the vehicle project in Goose Island.
No, I didn't know that.
I don't know what,
Transportation
I have no
Consultant
idea why
Division
he
in
was
Bethesda.
Uh-huh.
He was there, he came storming. And I'm like, well, it's just like John, like an absent minded. Why would he need a
look at Glenn and
His
Cleo.
name, what is his name?
Sorry, you're all ready?
Yeah, whenever you are.
I can't remember his name.
Well, it's actually work,
His name.
Okay.
just not city work,
All right.
not the city work.
So good evening. It is 5 p.m. on Monday, the 21st of March. And we are here for a special meeting of this mayor and city council to finalize the budget and take up some action, some considerations that were on our budget, or excuse me, on our regular scheduled meeting last Monday, which ran very long and we were unable to complete. So we're going to go through the budget first, and then we'll get back to the items that were moved from the previous budget to this previous meeting to this meeting. So the first item on the agenda is a presentation of possible action on the approval of the city budget for fiscal year 2023. I think everyone in the room, and certainly those sitting at the table, are well aware that we've had a very lengthy series of meetings that started in early February to come up with this budget, and we started at quite a discrepancy, and I think we've managed to work to come up with a budget that will work for all of us. I wanted to take particular time to note the efforts of Ellen Lorraine and the city manager into, first of all, developing a draft budget, and second of all, working with us as we managed to get through all the hearing of various committees and departments and other things that we've had to have listened to and had given thought to throughout this rather long process. Our Friday mornings have been pretty much consumed with this. So,
You will get your Friday mornings back now.
well, I'm sure we'll find something else to do with them. So the budget, and many of you may have already, and I'm not sure how many we have on listening. 7? Great, thank you. Many of you may have listened to some of the Zoom meetings. All of these meetings were Zoom, and so people could watch from their home. But the budget that we have arrived at is a $951,135 budget, which is up significantly from last year's budget. However, I think it does, it's divided by capital projects and general fund. Our general fund projects, our general fund activities will total $9,975,000, $9,975,195, and our capital projects will be $3,514,905. So you can see that we have substantial projects in the queue for this coming year. And I would say that we are still working with some other projects that may be funded from other resources that the city has received. And I think everyone also is aware that we have received ARPA money, and we still will be making some decisions as to how to do with what we will do with that and how it'll be utilized. Many of which can be utilized for capital projects that would benefit the entire community. So
Mayor, can I just clarify for people who are listening, that $9,975,000 includes the ARPA funds. So
does include it, but
right,
we haven't worked.
Right, but I just, because that is such a big difference, I thought it was
Sure.
for the benefit of the public, realizing
Thank you very much.
that includes ARPA.
Right, it does include ARPA, but it does not, we haven't decided how we will utilize it.
We haven't decided how we're utilizing it, but it does show the expense in there, so it.
Okay. So in that, we will be, our staff, our non-FOP staff will be receiving approximately a 5% raise in conjunction with what's going on economically in the country and inflation and what was offered, what was proposed and awarded to our senior citizens who are Social Security annuitants by the federal government. We felt that looking at the budget, this was a reasonable amount that we could build into our budget for this year. So our non-unionized personnel, our non-Teamsters personnel, and we are still working on the police contract, which is still not finished yet. And we will be coming back with whatever changes need to be made as a result of that as they are finalized. That is ongoing discussion, and it's not there yet. So with that, are there any comments from the table? We're going to deal with the specific items in terms of what rate increases we will be seeing here, and as we come up to the next two items. But is there any other comments are there any other comments from the table?
Well, I would just point out that where we're going to look to put in the rate increases are reflective of the growth of the community. So the salary increases in both, and also increases in headcount within the planning and the building department. We've taken on a transportation initiative, the Lewes line. So we're looking at increasing parking revenues. So for those that say, well, we're increasing parking, at the same time, we're offering a cheaper option for people who are coming out of town. You can ride the Lewes line for $1. But that comes at an expense.
Right.
the increase to the lifeguards saw almost $2 just so we can actually hire lifeguards, $2 an hour extra. So again, I'll say growth comes at a cost. So we'll think about this as we look in terms of how we want to grow Lewes. But I think, as Ted said, when we look at where we're going to look at increasing, it won't be taxed this time, but it might be in the future. But right now, we've looked to target it where we've seen the growth coming at us as a town.
Yeah. I would note, thank you, Andrew, that's good comments. I would note that over the past 2 years, we've ended up with a surplus in excess of $400,000 per year. So that made it possible for us to think about using some of the excess monies that some of our reserves. And this budget was balanced by anticipating that we would take $62,465 from prior year reserves in order to balance it. So, any other comments from the table?
I would only add, Andrew mentioned growth comes at a cost. I would also mention scarcity comes at a cost, meaning we have almost every industry has a worker shortage in this country right now. And so I think it was incumbent upon us, and I think we all discussed it at length, that we needed to make sure that our employees, who all, at least as far as I'm concerned, the ones I've dealt with, do a terrific job and really work hard, from the police department to the city manager, to the assistant city manager, to all the personnel here. And we wanted to make sure they felt valued in this very, very tight labor market. So growth has a cost, but so does scarcity as well.
Thank you. I think also, I mean, we also did manage to, in this budget, increase city services as well. We're taking on some new responsibilities and making improvements to Roosevelt Inlet and other things like that. That will be to the benefit of not only tourists, but also to our residents in terms of better organizing parking and opportunities for people to utilize the beach. So I think that overall, this was a give and take that the five of us and the city manager and Ellen Lorraine worked on. And I think we've come up with something that is very workable here and something we can work within for the coming year. So I would ask for a motion to approve this budget as presented.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion we approve the current budget as we have presented, and that is before us.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
second.
Thank you, Carolyn. So we have a motion and a second to approve this budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. The motion carries unanimously. So then we will move on to item 2, which is presentation and possible action on ordinance.
Excuse me, can you accept comment? Public comment?
Okay. Come to the microphone, identify yourself, and give us your street address, Rick.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Rick Spitzborg. I live at 122 Rodney Avenue. I have 4 brief questions about how the city budget will be impacted by the Fisher's Cove settlement agreement. The agreement was approved by the mayor and city council this fiscal year, but it appears that payments will be made in a future fiscal year, probably 2023. So my first question is to ask, which fiscal year will these expenditures be charged against?
Well, we don't know all the final numbers yet, but my expectation was it would probably be this fiscal year.
This fiscal year?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you. The city will be paying the developer of Fisher's Cove $500,000 to purchase lot number 3. Additionally, the agreement specifies that the city will pay an unspecified amount to satisfy transfer taxes and other settlement costs. So the question is, where are these funds coming from? Are they being taken out of general revenues, or are they being charged to a reserve fund?
So I guess the answer to that is there's an insurance component to this. So there's going to be some insurance dollars. We don't know how many insurance dollars are going to contribute to the settlement yet, but there will be some city funds as well. Baked into the budget is, I think, about a $600,000 legal line item, and I suspect some of it will come out of that category. I guess I kind of liken it to, an operation the size of the City of Lewes. We can't anticipate everything that's going to happen, so we can't always anticipate what litigation is going to happen. We can't anticipate, we try to anticipate, is a trash truck going to break down, are we going to have to replace it? And we try to bake all of that into the budget. But sometimes things like litigation, you just have to anticipate there's going to be litigation with an operation the size of the City of Lewes, and you've got to, sort of bake it into the legal line item. So I anticipate that's where those funds will likely come from. Yeah.
And the settlement on the lot does not happen immediately. It's possible that that could be in the following fiscal year, depending on how quickly lots sell.
That's true, right.
But it would still come out of the legal fund line item, regardless of the year?
Depends.
The reality too is we could have we can
Right.
do amendments to our budget.
Right, and that
We
may
will-
come out of one of the capital accounts as well.
And we will undoubtedly be amending the budget as we go forward here.
The city has also agreed potentially to pay the developer $40,000 toward the cost of a construction entrance and pay a possible additional $60,000 to the purchase of an access easement. So there is another $100,000, and the question is similar. What budget category or line item will be used to pay for those costs?
I think it's similar to the previous answer, and we're pretty sure there will be an insurance component to those numbers that you just mentioned. I'm not sure, again, exactly how much yet.
Okay. And those are the major expenses that one can observe in reading the settlement agreement. But I wanted to ask if you anticipate any additional city expenditures related to Fisher's Cove and/or the settlement agreement. And then, if so, what would be the total cost to the city?
So I wouldn't anticipate any other major ones. I think you've classified and identified all the major ones that are anticipated under the settlement agreement. There is ongoing regular legal bills, because even in the settlement agreement, we're still ironing some things out, so there'll be some ongoing costs related to that. But as far as the major components, you've identified them.
Okay. So it's the details regarding the effect of the agreement as it's going to apply to the budget have not really been provided to the taxpayers of Lewes. It's a significant amount of money, and there is broad public interest in the subject. And while I applaud your intent to gather public comment on the budget, you will not have benefited from an informed public comment until that additional information is provided to everybody. And I request that that be done promptly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments in the room before we move on?
Oh, I'm sorry, of course, that's why I have them here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. If there are no further comments, then I think we can move on to item B2, which is presentation of possible action on ordinance number 7-22, an ordinance to amend the chapter 193, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 15, Parking Meters, Municipal Code of the City of Lewes as it relates to parking fees. As we mentioned, we are adjusting parking meter fees this year. I would note that our meter fees at the beach have been at the same level of $2 an hour since 2017. That's 5 years, and our meters downtown have been at the rate of $1 an hour since at least 2014. That's 8 years. So the proposal that we have put forth in this ordinance change is that both meters, the meter at the beaches would go to $2.50 an hour, and the meters downtown will go to $1.50 an hour. The timing of the meters, the operation of the meters will not change. They'll still be from May 1st through October the 14th, and they'll still be from 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. in the evening. If there's any comments from the table?
I did have one. I mentioned this morning in the budget meeting, but I'd like to entertain the idea that once maybe we're within maybe a certain percentage of our revenue, what we've budgeted for the revenue, that we revisit it to look at are there shortfalls maybe in other areas that we do need this money? Or can we shut off the spigot and allow for sort of a late season free parking, so to speak, maybe turn off metered parking once we achieve the desired revenue goal? I mean,
I think that we can assess that as we go along.
yeah, not commit to, but I think,
Sure.
it's,
Sure, it's
at
an
a certain point, you can expect to see that on the agenda.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll see how we go. What we did find is that last year, in spite of the fact that we were in the middle of the COVID epidemic or pandemic, our meter fees increased significantly. And so people were using the meters. And so that is,
That's okay.
it's worth noting, and our meter fees have generated a fair amount of revenue over the years. And this is an opportunity to, we're not necessarily mimicking what's going on in other communities in the area, but we felt it was prudent to make some adjustments. So,
We're still well below some communities.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. So,
Rehoboth is $3.
yeah,
Throughout the
Rehoboth
entire
is
city.
$3 across
Yeah.
the board.
Oh.
Yeah. So, anyway, if there are any questions from the audience, we can entertain those. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve this amendment, this motion.
I make a motion, meter fees.
Okay?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to increase the meter fees from $2 an hour at the beach to $2.50, and from $1 at downtown, in the downtown parking areas, from $1 to $1.50. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Somebody's.
Somebody heard that beep, beep, beep?
It's a phone. It's a phone somewhere.
Okay, so then,
It's not me.
Mine's off.
somebody didn't like that.
Mine's off.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move
They're
on to
overparked.
item B3, which is presentation of possible action on amendment to the city's fee schedule as it relates to building permits. Here again, we have been operating with building permit fees that have not changed since 2017. And what we have done, our residential building permits used to be, or up until right now, or until the 1st of April, have been for up less than 3 units, $1 per square foot. And for more than 3 units, $2 per square foot. And for renovation, it's been $15 per $1,000 cost. And what we have decided to do, or what we're opting to do, is based on the construction cost, but not less than the amount of the cost computed using the newest version of the International Code Council's building valuation data, a square foot construction price of 1.5%. So this will be an adjustment, and it will make renovation and new construction both being, the permits for either being at 1.5%.
And functionally, the renovation fee remains the same.
Correct.
Right?
Right. Yes, functionally, it doesn't change, but it will appear differently.
Right.
Okay?
Mayor, one thing we talked about earlier, but it is not reflected in this, so if you all want to make the change, you should do it through a motion. But right now, the minimum building permit fee is $25, and we had discussed making it $50 as the minimum fee, but we have not taken,
Yeah, we didn't talk
we have not reflected that in the current fee schedule. So if you do want to make that change, that should be part of the motion.
Is it reflected in the calculus of our?
Yeah,
What is that based on?
There are very few permits that are the
Okay,
minimum.
then I'd
Oh,
rather
so
just
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
All right. So we can leave it at 25.
okay, so that stays.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions from the table? Or from the audience? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this action item?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. So with that, we have adopted a budget for next year. Obviously, as we've mentioned several times, undoubtedly there will be amendments as we go along, but we now have a budget, and we've done it, as Andrew noted, without raising taxes again this year. And Ellen, Lorraine, would you care to remind us how long it's been since we've had a tax increase?
April of 2010.
2010. So we have gone 12 years without a tax increase.
Hopefully that wasn't a symbol.
That was timing, based on that.
Was that the gong or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Glenn. Sorry about that.
All right, so, at some point, undoubtedly, taxes will have to be raised, but in this budget, we were able to do it. We were able to come to a balanced budget without having to raise taxes, which is good news for all of our property owners and residents. Okay, so then we can move on to item C1, which was some of the unfinished business from our meeting, which was held last Monday. First item is the presentation of possible action on implementing a monthly workshop meeting to discuss projects and ideas that are not ready for action by mayor and city council. Some of our neighboring municipalities already do this type of thing, where they have a planning meeting. There's no action taken. It's just an opportunity for the council to get together and discuss something, ask questions in a public venue, fully public meeting, and then shape what might be coming forward as an actual for action item. Glenn, I know you participate in these in Rehoboth. Would you care to comment how that works?
Yeah, I mean, so they have on the second Monday of the month at 9 a.m. is what they call their workshop meeting. And the workshop meeting, it's basically the items you're going to see again 2 weeks later on a meeting that they call it their regular meeting. Some places call it their business meeting, because that's kind of the voting meeting.
Right.
But what it's aimed to do really is to, kind of streamline and make the meetings more efficient. When we're here till, 4 or 5 hours, by the fourth hour, if your brains are like mine, it's hard to focus. And I think the idea is that you get through some of the deliberations in the public meeting so that you can kind of really frame the issues or get down to what is the basis of the issues. So then when you come into the voting meeting, you're kind of, your mind is kind of in a place that you might have 2 or 3 loose ends you want to tie up during the voting meeting, but typically you've done a lot of the deliberating and got out on the table what the issues are. It also provides an opportunity, I think, for the citizens to see the action item in a sort of a preview. They get to see it. Is this something I'm interested in? Do I need to show up at the voting meeting? Is it something I can comment on? And it gives them an opportunity between the workshop meeting and the voting meeting. I'm sorry about this, but to get to you and say, vote this way, do that, do this, on items that are appropriate for you to talk outside of the meeting. So I think they're pretty efficient. I mean, you have to be careful about meeting, I call it meeting creep. Once you start the second meeting, then there's the next special meeting that gets put in there. But I find them to be pretty efficient in Rehoboth anyway.
Okay.
They do the same. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is not the equivalent of a first reading and a second
No.
reading, which some other communities do, where they'll read something and not take action on it, and then they'll come back at the second meeting and read it.
That's right. Some jurisdictions have built into their code, certainly on zoning ordinances, a first reading or sometimes a second reading before, or sometimes even a third reading before an actual vote can be taken to implement the legislation. We don't have that statutory requirement in Lewes.
Glenn, what criteria do you use to ensure that it doesn't become a second 4-hour meeting and that you're staying to the sort of the hour or whatever you're?
Yeah, that actually is a really good question. That oftentimes is management by the chair, because some issues you can talk ad nauseum no matter how many meetings you have. So I think you're right about that. But I think overall, most of the items you'll find an efficiency. There will be some that you'll still talk about.
How long ago did the Rehoboth practices this? Is that correct?
I know Rehoboth's been doing it for 15 years.
15
or more.
years?
Yeah.
And what triggered them to adopt this practice?
I really don't know. I wasn't there at the time. I know that Kent County Levy Court does a similar process. I guess the Regional Planning Commission does. I don't know if.
Yeah, they do. Newark does something similar. They have, I'm not suggesting this at all, but they have meetings every Monday night. Unless there's a fifth Monday, they don't have it on the fifth Monday.
That would be.
We already have meetings
But,
every.
right, well, but what they do is 2 of them are workshop-style meetings and 2 of them are business meetings. And what Tom Coleman, their city manager, indicated was that they started that about 3 years ago because the length of their regular meetings was getting so long that this gave them the opportunity to talk about the issues in, again, a less formal setting. And then those meetings, when they do take the votes, tend to move more quickly and efficiently.
One thing you could consider that I've seen it done not in the context of a workshop meeting and then a voting meeting, but in the context of just a group that typically went very long. I won't say which group it was and what jurisdiction, but they set an end time to their meeting. They finally said, and when you have 2 meetings like this, you have the luxury of saying, this isn't a voting meeting, so it's not like we have to get through everything, but we'll set a time limit, and if it gets to be this hour, we'll cut it off, and then we'll bring it up at the business meeting.
I think the other thing is that we know that there are some items on our agenda that we can move through pretty quickly.
Right.
But then there are other items, such as the one meeting we had last Monday, where we had 3 presentations from 3 different organizations, all of which were worthwhile.
Right.
But they each took about 20 minutes. And, this, and I think that with the fact that we're continuing the virtual meetings, we could have, if we opt to have a second meeting or a workshop type meeting, we could have that meeting during normal business hours.
Right.
So we wouldn't have to obligate another evening here.
So it's interesting that you raised that, Mayor, because Rehoboth used to have their workshop meeting. It was a 7 p.m. Excuse me, it was a 7 p.m. meeting, and they switched that to a 9 a.m. meeting probably 7 years ago, and I don't think they saw any difference in the number of attendees. Just sort of the people who are interested in the agenda items, if it's a 9 a.m. meeting or a 7 p.m. meeting, they seem to get there.
And how do they adjust to the COVID-related things? The idea of when everything was in the virtual environment. Are you able to conduct a meeting like this workshop meeting, in a virtual environment?
We did.
100%?
Yeah, we did. There was no votes taken, so and maybe it's easier to conduct a workshop type meeting than a voting meeting in a virtual setting.
Right. So, and they're continuing that practice in Rehoboth now, even with the relaxation of, the.
So they're continuing the 2 meeting
Correct.
framework, but Rehoboth has made a decision to go away from virtual meetings. So they're going all live meetings.
I can see where something like this has merits, because there are things that we can get through faster. But I think I'm in favor of making sure that there's a time limit so that it doesn't end up just being a run-on.
I would further add that I'd be open to doing this as well, but I also am concerned about, as you referred to, as meeting creep. And I would suggest that perhaps we do this on a trial basis.
Absolutely.
And see how this works out, if it's really being productive and efficient. If it's not, then
Yeah,
but we have a lot
just
of
another
meetings.
meeting.
Yeah.
Well, theoretically, it could reduce the overall number of meetings because.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Let's see if that really works.
Yeah.
And also, I was going to suggest maybe we don't have to schedule them in advance. We could see that as
See what's
after
on the
the
agenda.
meeting and say, kind of like we did at the end of this Monday meeting, we're not going to get through these 4. So we're clearly going to need, this time we need it because we had a budget hearing. But in the future, we may need to say, let's set a second meeting 2 weeks out and maybe use that as an opportunity to vote on what we didn't finish. And otherwise,
That's
I think we're going to use it as an excuse to pile on more, because we're saying, halfway through, we can make sure everyone's all.
But I think
I think in some ways it slows it down automatically because you don't put things on the regular Monday night meeting agenda, with the exception of like land use applications and things like that, until they've been properly vetted. So, an ordinance wouldn't go on there until you all have discussed it and have some level of comfort with it. where I know that there have been a number of cases where, you know, an ordinance is on an agenda, and some of you may not really be comfortable with how it's worded and what's the best path
I
forward.
would say, I envision, I'm with Khalil, I do a trial, and I'd say 3 months, because I'll be honest, like, I'm gonna be hard pressed to come off the beach on a Friday afternoon to like attend a public workshop. That's why I'm like, you might be seeing me like this.
We could come to you on the beach.
So,
We'll evaluate your, yeah, no, I get it. We'll evaluate your tan, basically.
Can we ask the people in the audience if any of them have any suggestions or comments about this? And if there's anyone on the Zoom who
Certainly
might
can.
want to raise
If
their,
anybody wants to comment.
Who's on this list?
do you all you follow what we're talking about?
And I know that Andy has been active in Rehoboth, and so you may have seen firsthand the success or not of that.
I mean, I think it
Want to come to the mic and identify yourself for us, please, Andy?
I haven't seen him in years.
Hi, just Andy Staton. I'm here for another issue on the agenda today. But, I mean, I've seen it pretty effective for the public workshops, right? I mean, it helps move the agenda along when you get to the formal council meeting. And you know, I generally think it offers a little bit more of camaraderie debate around issues that are important to the town and engages the public in doing so.
I have one more question about this. Do we have to have a quorum present at this workshop?
Yes.
Yes.
So you have to have a quorum?
Yeah, the idea is that you're still consensus building, you're sharing ideas, so that is conducting business even though you're not taking votes.
That takes care of that one, didn't it?
I was calling it in sick. I was wondering on you to write a note.
He was already
As long as the rest of us, as long as two more of us are here.
There's a
Already
terrible flu going around.
planning
I
it.
think if it's gonna work, there needs to be attendance, because
Sure.
if you don't resolve the issues at that workshop level, then you're still gonna end up
And are
taking
minutes
time.
required at this workshop?
Yes, at any public.
Right.
I think we do a trial. We just do a trial on this and see.
Well, I think Andrew is suggesting that a 90-day trial, a 3-month trial is worth trying. But we're so close to the April agenda, I don't
So
think.
I mean, I
already
think
in it.
we're looking at it would have to be the end of April. Because
And make the April agenda shorter, please.
we're trying.
Maybe actually you don't even do it until June. Given everything else.
There you go, Barbara.
What did you say, Barbara?
She said maybe September.
Yeah, I mean, it is summertime.
See, Barbara, you're on my boat, right?
I'm perfectly comfortable with waiting till fall, but I think what's happened is, you know, we've had too many meetings that have run really long, and I think Glenn's point after about 4 hours. And the meeting last Monday we started with an executive session at 5.
Right.
And we were here until 11, and we still had 6 items on the agenda to cover.
Right.
You know, I mean,
And think about this, because we were coming into that situation previously, and the changes we made to address, because we had, under the previous council, meetings that were going till 11 and beyond, and the changes we made included having the executive session prior, and starting the meetings at 6:30, and now we're back to now we just start earlier and go till 11. I don't think that we anticipated that would be the case. So, I mean, the question is, how do we manage to not,
Yeah.
you know?
well, if everyone's in agreement, I think Carolyn and Andrew have, or not Carolyn, but Barbara and Andrew have a fairly good idea. Maybe we wait till fall.
I have one more question to ask. Would it be possible for us to move what I'll call the presentations to that workshop meeting instead of our council meeting?
As long as it's just a workshop where you're not going to,
Yeah.
as long presentation where you're not making
Right.
any decisions.
Yeah, all those
Okay,
presentations that
well,
happened
that would have
Monday.
been an hour that we would have just saved ourselves.
Yeah.
So, you know what?
Yeah, it is the workshop's other ones.
I know how I'm going to vote on this one now.
The other thing, The other thing perhaps to think about at some point is, one thing Rehoboth did as well is they moved to a consent agenda. So meeting minutes, like, they have like 6 or 7 items that are all under consent agenda.
We do too.
Yeah.
We do that now.
We do.
We do that.
Okay.
My jurisdiction's messed up. That's
Yeah,
right.
you got too many
Never mind.
minutes.
Part of that usually, so you take it out.
You know, the other thing that,
Arriving as we're doing.
the public workshop model may also, we all are frustrated with FOIA, and we can't meet with each other all the time. We have to meet, this may relieve some of that, that time stress and make us a little bit more efficient as well.
That's true.
All right, so,
Oh, Barbara has something to say.
yes, Barbara, come up and, yes, identify yourself again, so we make sure we got you. You had that experience a few
Yes.
times today.
Barbara Warnell, 53 Cape Henlopen Drive, Unit 105, Lewis. We had a couple situations with H Park that go back actually a couple years, and what Robin and I talked about doing is, and I don't know that you can do this, is that we decided we could only really handle so many applications at any given H Park meeting, especially when if you started to view the preliminary stuff and realize how time-consuming they were going to be. We tried to do that. It really never worked, but I think it's still an admirable idea. And we've run into something that you have, is our meetings used to start at 7, and we pretty much tried to get it done by 9. Now we start at 6 and try to get it done by 9.
Yeah.
So
Everything's gotten very busy.
everything takes, a lot of this stuff takes so long.
Yeah.
And we run into the
about the
same thing you
details.
do, that, I mean, I wish we could have some time to kind of banter about some of these applications, because you look at them, you read all the stuff, and there's so many unknowns, you know, and you don't get that until you sit with the people. And sometimes I think it's a disservice to them, you know, not to have some kind of maybe a preliminary application, but then you're talking about more meetings, and,
Yep.
you know, sometimes it's hard to do the right thing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Some of the things that you suggested at the early part of your conversation, we do. I mean, we frequently, when the draft comes out, council reviews things and this isn't ready for action, or we need more time to think about this. So in an informal way, that kind of, before anything hits a published agenda, we do some of that.
Right, and Robin was able to do that too, because he would immediately call people up and say, this is an incomplete application.
Right.
You know, you can either get all this stuff to me in 24 hours, or you're going to have to go on to next month. Now, right now, I'm doing that with Joe Pembroke, and, you know, we're sort of setting a schedule where we look at stuff and make those same kind
Well,
of...
it's not only fair to the committee, but it's also fair to the applicant.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
I think,
mean,
you know,
and
the other evening, we had one presentation that was very late, and I really felt, and the other thing we had, the director of the commissioner for ABC was here, and they were both sitting in this room for like 3 hours waiting for us to get to them.
yeah.
It's really not fair
it's
use
not
of their
fair.
time.
Right.
No, it's not, and we try, if an applicant has to come back for a second time, they're supposed to be the first agenda item.
Right. Okay.
We try to be conscious of that.
Yeah, we try to arrange things like that once, to the best of we can. Okay, so what's your pleasure? Do we want to table this until fall?
No,
Oh, you want to try it?
try it.
Okay, but I don't think we can really try it before,
We could start the end of April.
okay. All right,
So that would be April for the May agenda, the May meeting, right?
Okay.
all right.
Which interestingly, because of the election, the May meeting won't be until the 23rd.
So it'll be, actually, it will be in May.
Oh,
Okay. Well, then, I'll make a motion to trial the public workshops for a 3-month period,
90 days, yeah.
well, absolutely, I second that.
see how it works.
I think
Okay,
we
so
do
we have a motion and a
better.
second.
Yeah,
All in
we do
favor?
better if we do.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good.
Workshop.
All right, so then item C2 is presentation of possible action on a plan for proceeding with the electrical vehicle charging stations. And I'll give the floor to you in just a minute, Tim, but I think just for the benefit of everyone who's in the room, the state government has come up with monies that they are reimbursing up to 90% of the cost of EV charging stations, not the installation, but the cost of the purchase of a charging station, up to 6 per municipality or per entity. in order to encourage installation of EV charging stations. This has been going on. We know that we have EV charging stations, and we have 4 now, 2 Tesla and 2 regular trickle charges in the city that were actually donated. And we see that they are being used. I think any of us who drive the streets of this town recognize that there are many, many EV vehicles appearing more regularly on our streets, or perhaps more regularly in our neighbor's driveway. And so it is something that is evolving, and I was watching something on the news the other night where they're amazed at the rapidity with which EV vehicles are being purchased. And I think the one thing they were talking to someone about, she purchased a used EV vehicle, and the scarcity of an EV vehicle that's used. Because they were saying there's one large dealership in some major metropolitan area had like 89 or 90 cars on their lot, and they had one EV vehicle for, these were used vehicles.
Did he take into consideration that there was a ship that caught on fire?
And some of those were EVs. Yeah.
So these EV charging stations that are available to be paid for by the state government or through federal funds are actually a J2 charging station, which is not a rapid charging station. So it would be a regular charging station. And it's a J1772 connector. And so they are not a rapid charging, but they are.
Level 2.
Level 2, thank you. And so we've talked about, should we put them in some of our parking lots? Should we not? Should we participate in this? We know that the ferry has some. We know that
has them?
Yes, they've had some for 10 years. And the Wawa station, the Wawa out on the highway has some. And we know that we have many homes that are installing their own charging stations. Yes, Barbara, back to the podium. Sorry about
We
that.
got your address, though, we're good.
Sit down. Just pull up a chair.
Yeah, pull the chair up.
Barbara Warnell, 53K Penlippen Drive, Unit 105. Are they the rapid?
No, they're all J2.
Including the ones at Wawa?
At Wawa, I think those are the rapid.
They're all Teslas.
The-
We're
those
talking
are
about the
test-
ones under consideration if we were to.
Yeah, I know, but when you mentioned all the other locations, I was curious of the comparison of what you were proposing.
No, they're all
and
the
what-
same.
I think Wawa is the only one that has the superchargers.
Right.
And that's
Well,
just
the
for
only,
Teslas?
there's one.
I think so. And
Right.
and there's a charge for those. They're not free.
Oh, they're not?
And the other place that has them is the Botanic Gardens.
And
Down
the
in
outlets.
Sullyville.
There's
Down
some in the
Sullyville.
outlets, too.
Well, my only thought is if they're not fast chargers, you want to put them places where people are going to spend some time, like
Like the
maybe
park.
They can walk to downtown
Right.
shopping
We've yeah.
and dinner and food and.
Sure. We've never entertained the idea of putting them on the street. We've always talked about parking lots.
Right, just
Okay.
make them
Yeah. Okay.
incentive for shopping.
Okay. So this is a statewide program. I think there's $1.4 million identified for this program, and you can't apply for the money until they're installed.
Oh,
So that, you have to have proof of purchase, so to speak, in order to be reimbursed for it. We know that the city of Milford has done this, and they have installed 6. So I would open it up. Tim, I know you've done a lot of work on this. You want to talk about it?
I'll be happy to answer questions.
I was going to say, I think Tim's work speaks for itself. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned yourself, Mayor, that the only reimbursement is for the charge station itself. So all of the install and all this appears to be quite a lot more expensive than I thought. I think it said 30 grand, 25 grand.
34.
Yeah, and then the other piece is, I think there will be other incentives that come along. And I don't know that the fact that this technology is not, this will probably be expiring soon, I
Well,
think that this trickle technology, and I think the other thing is the batteries themselves are getting better, so what need really will someone have if they're gonna come down here on vacation, or if they live here? They're gonna charge up at the residence and top off to get 5 miles? Please come forward.
So, Andy Staten, Rehoboth Beach. So I'm on my second Tesla, and it's quite the opposite. We, as driving around or maybe coming to visit Southern Delaware, you left Wilmington and all of a sudden you only have 100 miles left and you got to go back home. I look for places that I can go charge, and I then go spend money, time, and effort in that place that I do. So Tesla, you're right, has superchargers. They will be opening that in the next year, I believe, to other electric vehicles. So if you have an Audi or another car, you can actually pay Tesla with an adapter to your own car, right? They're kind of solving the VHS beta problem,
Oh, right.
right? So they're going to offer that, right? It's a business model for them. They're electric
Right,
company.
and they were
right?
supposed to do
So-
that last year.
Yeah, so they're
and they missed
moving that
Right.
model forward. But
Pretty
I will
quickly.
tell you that, in Rehoboth, I know they've installed, these hybrid chargers that you can anywhere. And I temporarily live downtown, and I took my car over there, every single night and charged, and I paid for it. It's also, is it a revenue generating thing for the city as well, right? So you
It
could
could be.
charge money for that.
Could be, but we're not.
Down the road. I
We
would
could
think
charge
could.
for this. We're currently, the 4 stations we have, we're not charging for.
So I pay for the parking and then I can charge.
And
the car.
actually, our 4 stations are in non-metered lots.
Oh, I would
So you're coming over here to visit us more regularly.
respectfully consider to tell you that you
Right.
probably should look at where you would pay,
That's our
right?
point there. Right now, we're giving it away.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to, is what he's saying.
I'm not saying that I'm gonna pay for it anyway, wherever I go. I mean, if I go to a Tesla supercharger, I'm paying for it. If I go to the outlet malls and I wanna charge my car, I pay for it. And a trickle charger level 2, I just look, cause I have one in my house, is about, 30 miles an hour. So I go have dinner and I can add 30 or 60 miles. I will tell you, somebody gets very nervous every now and then, of not having enough charge to go where I wanna go next. You start to figure it out very quick where you wanna
Sure,
go.
but my point is Lewis does have charging stations.
Yeah,
And I don't know that we need to proliferate if we have a few and people can
I
charge
don't
at home.
disagree with you, so,
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that both of the locations that we have charging stations are locations where we are getting ready to redo the parking lots. So, over on Schley Avenue, when we reconfigure that lot, we need to determine if we are going to move the existing charging station or get new ones. I think part of the issue is my understanding, and I did add it to our joint workshop with BPW for next week, but I don't believe that BPW wants to pay for the electricity in perpetuity. So right now, the 2 locations that we have are free charging, and the board's been picking up the electricity for that. So we do need to look at, if we want to continue that, moving to something like ChargePoint, which would mean, upgrading the stations themselves.
And that also could mean that you would, instead of the city acquiring the stations, which is required under this rebate program, you would simply enter into a contract with ChargePoint where the equipment would be owned by ChargePoint, and then they would they become a vendor, a service provider within the city. But that kind of program, that kind of relationship is not sponsored by the rebate program that's before us. If we're going to take advantage of this rebate program, it requires the city to acquire the stations.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Okay, and the biggest expense here is, as Andrew, I believe it was, who spoke to this, is not the actual capital cost of the stations, it's actually all the installation costs that you incur. And the numbers that I provided in my report are not, grabbed out of thin air. This is actual contract costs associated with the DRBA for a charging station that they installed. They acquired the equipment and they hired the vendor the electrician to put the station in place.
The only thing I would say to that is it depends on the location of the electric feed to.
Of course.
To the site.
Of course.
So while I don't.
We've not studied that.
So,
And-
I mean,
and
that's the
well,
whole,
actually-
Anne Marie's point is that we don't have, if we're gonna use
no, I
these to
agree.
replace what's over
Correct.
there in Schley Lot, we've not worked with, in conjunction with BPW or Charlie or anybody to say,
so
there's no real cost to it because we're replacing what's there, or indeed, it's gonna be 10 instead of 30 because we just have to move it 10 feet. We don't know that.
Okay.
So to vote on it now.
Okay, so I think maybe what I'm hearing is we want to table this until we have a better chance to talk with
That's what it sounds like.
BPW.
Or this charge point, maybe that makes more sense for
We
us.
could certainly investigate what the rate is from ChargePoint. I do know that the stations that are being installed under this program are charge stations. And I happen to know a little bit about one that I'm having installed, and my installation costs are less than $6,000.
Right. And that just, again, it gets to how, if you're able to install it in close proximity to existing infrastructure, close to a transformer, a panel box, et cetera, then that keeps your costs down. The other part of this is that there is software-related purchases for these charging stations, and that's a licensing fee that you have to incur. And the other recommendation that came from the DRBA person with whom I met said he highly recommended that if the city did anything, that you also buy, in effect, the extended warranty, not only on the hardware is very reliable, but it's on that software. Because you need to have the support from the tech side. When these systems fail, you need to be able to pick up the phone, notify them, or they actually know already because they're monitoring the traffic all the time. And if they see a failure, they have to respond immediately to get the system back up and running. So it all costs money, and it adds up to, for DRBA, $34,000 per unit,
For that-
per station.
Okay, so we could, we have a meeting with the BPW, a joint meeting with BPW next Monday evening at this time. There's no reason why, and it's on the agenda to be discussed.
Well,
There's
then
no
that's
reason
what
we
we ought to
can't
do.
discuss, and we could take action at our.
Considering too.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait.
What we have learned is that, from this, that the BPW, just one second, Barbara, the BPW would also qualify under this program, so we could end up with as many as 12. And the other piece the other thing to think about is that if we wanted to recycle the ones that we're currently using, we have one EV vehicle, and the board has one EV vehicle, which could be relocated to the city lot, where they would be only used by city or BPW vehicles.
Right, and that, Austin and I had talked about that.
Oh, dear.
That's-
Yeah, I was actually reading an article today, just ran across it, about New Jersey's $1 million grant program to coastal towns for EV stations. And to Andy's point, they gobbled up that money, it was gone before you knew it, because they have determined, I don't know if through a survey or just anecdotally, but they've determined that people do research where these stations are available, and they will go there. Yeah, and so it is important. I mean, I don't think that if we approve the purchase of more of these, the reimbursement, we should be charging the next day. Yeah, I don't think the fact that we've been giving this away for long enough is just,
Well, the BPW's had access to monies to pay for this, because the person who donated the charging
okay.
stations actually donated money as well. Credits.
okay, for the cost of the electricity.
And we're all paying for it as ratepayers.
Yeah.
Well, they're using, right now, the board's using their green energy.
The green energy money,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And if you need to top off, there's Daily Mart. Do you know the Daily Mart lot? Those are on there, and then Schley.
And there's the one,
And go to
there's a Tesla at each of them. So, go have dinner and try,
And you know what?
Worth of Powerball tickets.
And and Andy, at the DRBA, right in front of the, as you approach Grain, that area, the facility, they have 2 stations there. They still haven't opened them quite yet, but they will be. But they're going to be charging you 21 cents per kilowatt, and parking's free there. And they're recovering their KW costs
Andy,
by,
what's a typical fee, like charge if you're, say, for an hour in Rehoboth?
So it's a little different at, so my first car actually got free charging at Tesla chargers.
Right.
So I primarily went to Tesla. Now I rarely go outside. If I go to the Tesla station, to charge about 350 miles, so to equate to how much you might get in your vehicle, it's about $20. So, but you're gonna pay 50 or 60, 50 or 60 in gas. At home, it's $8. I can do a full charge for $8 at home.
And you have a trickle charge, or do you have a rapid charge?
Jay.
I have a trickle charger, it's 30 miles an hour, so I
Yeah,
just do it
Right.
so you just leave it overnight.
overnight. Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay, thank you very much. Your timing for being here tonight has been very helpful.
Yeah.
And Barbara, you had some other comment you wanted to make. You got to identify yourself again.
Barbara Warnell.
She's still Barbara
53. I love it driving it. I just
We're going to
wondered.
meet your
if-
alter ego.
Yeah, it could be. And anyway, I just wondered if there had been any consideration to doing a solar paneled device. And back when we were first doing the park, I proposed that there be charging stations down there with a solar cover that actually fueled them. I mean, I have no data that says you can do that. But you see so many of these parking areas. We were just up in Wilmington, and there's a big parking area, and it's, the whole top of it's just a one
Panels.
floor. It's all solar panels.
Right.
Now, I don't know if there's electric chargers in there, but there should be. And, you know, I would think if you're going to, you know, take a moment to re-examine this, at least explore it, because
Explore all of that. I do just tell you that this offer expires June 30th.
well, maybe you can.
So there may be other things that come along. I'm not saying we have to
Well, you
act, but
may,
And there
or-
will
Or
be.
maybe you can say yes to the offer. Do you have to do anything except say
You have,
yes?
you have to buy it. You have to
you have
take,
to buy the equipment.
yeah, you have to buy it.
It has to
And
be
install
purchased
it, as
and
I recall.
installed. You have to submit you have to buy the equipment and have it installed.
Well, then that's a little bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
I would also say in terms of your solar panel idea, it's an excellent one.
Yeah.
But the BPW has been looking at installing a solar field for some time out at the wellheads.
Well, yeah, the wellheads would be a great place because you want them protected. Yeah. Otherwise, they really should only be where something else is going on underneath.
Got it, yeah. I've seen parking lots in large malls where they've got them.
Tech has that up at the.
They do up at,
What's it called, Terry
Ocean View-
Campus?
Ocean View's City Hall and police station has,
Right,
their parking lot has,
right. But that
That's
has
not
nothing to do with
that's not-
EV charging.
Nothing to do with EV charging.
no.
It's
No,
just,
no,
They
no.
just,
Yeah, they
all
just-
she's saying
Right.
is where you already have
Right.
You
coverage.
utilize
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
Yeah, you
space
just
that
utilizing.
something functions underneath.
yeah,
you know.
and there are, and we have legislation that is very favorable to people installing solar panels on their homes here in town.
Except in H Park, right? I said
No,
that for
they
Barbara's
are.
sake.
They are.
They
I'm
are,
just-
they are.
We do.
I was just kidding.
We're not allowed to deny the.
But there are certain roofing materials you cannot install solar panels over, like cedar.
Yeah. That would make sense. The heat
So
gain
we,
there.
we do have, Austin submitted a comment. He said, these are per location / address, meaning the city could purchase 25 if we wish, as long as there are only 6 allocated to any one
Okay.
address.
So
That's
the
correct.
number keeps growing.
Any one spot.
Okay.
Right.
So I think we'll have this discussion. Thank you, Austin, for your comment. That was helpful. I think we'll have this discussion with you and the board on next Monday night, our regular Monday night, 5 o'clock meeting.
Right.
And we'll take it up then.
Good.
Okay, so then we have one item of new business, which is discussion and possible action to approve a lease extension for 11 Illinois Avenue. Glenn, this is a by right lease renewal, correct?
Standard by right lease renewal, that's right, Mayor.
Okay. And I think we've had it looked at. Are there any, Janelle, is there anything we need to be concerned about? Okay, I would just note for the record that there are 3 trees that are large planted in the state right-of-way
Right.
that are mature trees. I don't see requiring them to be removed, but I think certainly the new owner should be aware that they're in the state right-of-way, and these trees will have a life expectancy of so many years. And when their life is over, chances are they will not be able to be replaced. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, is there any comment or question from the table?
No.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the lease extension for 11 Illinois.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
You can see.
Now you can go charge your
Are you going to be putting in a residential charging station there?
Andy stating for public comment, I would say you should charge us, right? Come to the town, charge us, put them in the parking lots where you have meters. I mean,
Okay.
we'll pay for them,
We'll see what we can do, Andy.
right?
It's good to see
Unfortunately, it's
you.
only 6 miles to drive.
You want to leave us your credit card so we can run it?
Thanks, Andy.
Take care, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Ruby.
Yeah, right. It's like, sure.
Okay, so now we need a motion to go into executive session.
Andy is a real estate.
I'm not sure that we have anything. Okay, I think,
No,
I think we've worn Glenn out.
But I haven't.
I have
seen
something for
any
executive session.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
State.
All right.
Oh, yes, you do.
Okay.
What's
Barbara,
Andy's-
goodbye. Would you close the door on your way out?
What's Andy's last name? Stan?
We need a motion to go into executive session.
That's okay.
Andy's last name.
I think
Stan.
Barbara
I think
Warner
it's
was
Stan.
channeling Dennis Reardon.
I mean,
I was thinking the same thing. You need a motion, you need a motion.
Okay, somebody give us a motion to go into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session.
How about a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Khalil, the floor is yours. Well, as soon as Kayla
What are
and,
we going in?
Give me a second. Give me a
get out of here,
Executive
Khalil.
session
Okay.
for?